Peptides work. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. If you healed your shoulder, fixed your sleep, or gave someone you love the quality of their life back using peptides, I believe you, absolutely. It is real. I'm not here to take that from you, but I still won't touch them. I'm Dr. Ben Lynch, and I spent 20 years studying how various compounds interact with our genes. There are 4 specific things that peptides do inside your body that most people injecting them have never been told. And that is why I don't use them. And I'm going to share with you exactly what I mean. Before you decide whether peptides are right for you, I want you to understand what they actually are. Peptides are not supplements. They're genetic switches. Marketing tells you peptides are just amino acids, building blocks, natural, gentle. Technically true, mechanistically extremely misleading. Peptides are signaling molecules. Your body, yes, makes thousands of them, and they tell your cells what to do, when to grow, when to heal, and when to stop. But when you inject a synthetic peptide, you're not adding a nutrient. You're dropping a signal into a network of thousands of genes that talk with each other constantly. And they do that in 4 specific ways. The first is DNA methylation. Think of genes like a giant control panel of light switches. DNA methylation is how your body flips certain switches off, quieting genes it doesn't want active right now. Some peptides interfere with the enzymes that run that system. They can keep genes on that should be off. Whether that's harmful or helpful depends entirely on which genes we're talking about, and nobody can predict that ahead of time for you specifically. The second, histone modification. Your DNA is not floating around loosely in your cells. It's wound tightly around proteins called histones. Think of histones like thread holding your DNA around a spool. How tightly it's wound determines whether your genes can be read. Some peptides loosen that winding, others tighten it. Loosen it, more gene activity. Tighten it, you got less gene activity. We can't yet predict which direction a given peptide will push that balance and you specifically. The third, microRNA disruption. Your cells use tiny molecules called microRNAs to fine-tune genetic expression. Not one gene at a time, but dozens of them at once. Think of it like a volume knob, increasing the volume across an entire orchestra. When a peptide interferes with one microRNA, it doesn't affect just one gene. It affects every gene that microRNA was regulating. That is a wide net to cast when you don't know exactly where it's going to land. And then there's the fourth one. Some peptides instruct your body to grow brand new blood vessels. That's called angiogenesis. When you are healing an injury, new blood vessels are useful. They bring oxygen and nutrients to the damaged tissue. That's how peptides like BPC 157 appear to help tendons heal. But here's the issue. New blood vessel formation does not discriminate by intent. Tumors use the exact same mechanism. They grow by sending out signals that say, build me more blood vessels so I can keep on growing. A 2017 study in the Journal of Molecular Medicine confirmed that BPC 157 activates a receptor called VEGFR2, a pathway that plays a major role in roughly half of human cancers, from ovarian to melanoma. Now, to be clear, activating VEGFR2 in a healthy person with no tumor is not the same thing as causing cancer. Your body uses angiogenesis routinely. The concern is whether or not you have a subclinical tumor that you don't yet know about, and whether or not you're going to be feeding it. And if you carry variants like MTHFR or COMT that already slow your methylation cycle, you have less buffer for any of this. You're stacking an epigenetic modulator on top of a system that's already compromised. So you'd think if these compounds can rewrite how your genes function, somebody must have studied what that looks like in human data. Well, there's got to be something, right? Well, let me show you what the FDA found and then walk back. In late 2023, the FDA reviewed the available human safety data on the most popular wellness peptides. More than a dozen compounds were moved back to Category 2, including BPC 157, TB 500, CJC 1295, ipamorelin, melanotan-2, and others. Category 2 means licensed compounding pharmacies can no longer produce them. But what did the review actually find? Adverse event reports, including deaths. But I want to be precise here. The FDA adverse event data reflects what was reported among people using these compounds. It does not establish causation. People who use other compounds also die of other things. The point that I want to make is that we are relying on adverse event reports because clinical controlled trials don't exist for most of these compounds. GHRP2, serious adverse events, including death. Ipamorelin, deaths in IV infusion settings. CJC 1295, adverse events and DNA damage in the pituitary. AOD 9604, adverse events. MK677, elevated blood glucose and joint pain. Melanotan-2, 4 melanoma cases, kidney injury, and muscle breakdown. Melanotan-2 deserves its own focus. It aggressively stimulates the receptor that controls skin pigmentation. The FDA issued a specific consumer warning. Melanotan-2 has never been approved for human use, not under research protocols, not provisionally, never. Yet, it's still being sold online today. Then, in February 2026, the FDA reversed course on 14 of these compounds. They moved toward reinstating availability with a review meeting scheduled for July of 2026. Yet, no major new clinical trial data drove that reversal. No long-term human studies appeared between 2023 and 2026 that resolved the outstanding safety questions. If you follow the news at all, you know the reversal reflects regulatory and political pressure, not new evidence. The data gap is the same size it was. Even if we set aside what the data shows about the compounds themselves, most people injecting these peptides don't realize what's actually in the vial. A significant portion of the peptides people are currently injecting come from unregulated manufacturers, sold through online vendors, labeled for research only to sidestep FDA oversight. When independent labs tested gray market peptides, here's what they found, and it was not good. Almost 1 in 3 vials did not contain the intended compound. 65% had bacterial byproducts above safety limits, and endotoxins, when injected, trigger systemic immune activation, which drive fever and inflammation. In severe cases, septic shock. Not good. And nearly 1 in 5 contain heavy metals that accumulate in your organs over time. Now, gray market vendors may show you a certificate of analysis with 99% HPLC purity. That number sounds reassuring, but here's what HPLC purity actually measures. What percentage of the organic content in the vial is peptide related? That's it. It tells you nothing about whether that peptide is the right peptide, nothing about endotoxins, nothing about heavy metals, and nothing about microbial contamination. A vial can show 99% purity by HPLC and still contain enough endotoxin to trigger a serious systemic response. For analyzing a peptide to see if it's actually potentially safe for you, you need to have more than just what they're sharing with you. You need all 6 of these: HPLC purity, mass spectrometry identity, endotoxin testing, a heavy metals panel, residual solvent analysis, and microbial limit testing. Asked for all 6. Most gray market vendors cannot produce them because they never ran those tests. Now, if you're getting peptides from an accredited compounding pharmacy operating under USP 797 and 805 standards with a real prescription from a licensed physician, the supply chain picture is genuinely different. It's better. That's a meaningful distinction. But I want you to hold one thing in your head. Regulatory availability is not clinical validation. A perfectly sterile, correctly dosed vial of CJC 1295 from the absolute best compounding pharmacy in the country still has no long-term human safety data. Quality control solves contamination. It does not solve the underlying unknown. If you're healthy Minimal genetic risk factors, no underlying conditions, and you've gone through a licensed health professional, the risk picture is lower. For some people, peptides aren't a calculated risk. They're a categorically different conversation. So, who should not be using these? This is not a universal caution. It's a specific one. For these populations, the math changes completely. Anyone with active cancer or a cancer history. BPC 157 and TB 500 stimulate angiogenesis. That could be a problem during cancer. Anyone with autoimmune conditions. Injectable peptides can generate immune responses, including antibody formation against the peptide itself. When there are impurities in the vial, which, as we just saw, is common in gray market products, that immune response can compound quickly. If your immune system is already dysregulated, pregnant and breastfeeding women should not be using peptides. It is not the time to experiment. People with significant insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes, growth hormone secretagogues like CJC 1295, ipamorelin, and sermorelin, MK677, push IGF-1 upward and can worsen your insulin resistance. But it's not just these 5 categories. The difference is written in their DNA because your genes change the equation. Even if you're not in any of those groups, your individual genetics can shift the risk entirely. 2 people can inject the same dose of the same peptide and end up in completely different places. While there are a plethora of genetic variants that increase your vulnerability to peptides, such as inflammatory cytokines, vitamin D, oxidative stress, how well your methylation cycle is working, it doesn't really matter about your genetic variants because a variant does not have to be present for a gene to be dysfunctional. That's the whole premise behind dirty genes. The environment, nutrient deficiencies, medications, chronic stress, poor sleep, toxic exposures, all of these can compromise how these genes function regardless of what your genetic reports say. A lot of the people using peptides already have significant genetic dysfunction, whether it's genetic or epigenetic. Their methylation cycle is sluggish, their oxidative stress is elevated, their inflammatory tone is already high. Short term, peptides produce results. I get that. And if you're feeling better, sleeping better, healing faster, that's real and it matters. But we are deliberately altering DNA expression in people whose underlying gene function we haven't assessed. 5 years from now, 10 years, I generally hope the results hold up and nothing surfaces that we didn't see coming. I just don't know, and neither does anyone else. Where do I personally land with peptides? Let me be direct because I think it matters. I don't use peptides. Not because I think that they're poison, not because I discount what people are experiencing. I don't. My standard is this. I use compounds that match what my body already produces and already recognizes. Methylfolate, for example. My body makes it, plants make it, but I can take a synthetic version of it that's chemically identical to both, and I do. Magnesium, ascorbic acid, creatine, same principle. Their chemistry is something my cells already recognize and they're built to work with in safe amounts. Peptides, yes, exist naturally in the body, I don't dispute that. But their specific compounds being injected at the doses being used, delivered by a syringe rather than produced in context by your own physiology, triggering genes and gene expression in ways that we don't know, that's a different situation than replacing a nutrient that your cells already know and can regulate. Your body produces peptides under precise regulatory control, the right amount at the right time in the right tissue space in response to the right physiological signals. Injectable peptides completely bypass that regulatory structure. Maybe that's fine. I don't know. Doesn't seem like. Maybe the system can absorb that disruption without long-term consequence. I generally hope so, but we don't have the data yet. So here's what I recommend regardless of what you decide. 1, get a full cancer marker screen before using any pro-angiogenic peptides. 2, never buy injectable peptides from gray market sources. A licensed, accredited compounding pharmacy with an actual prescription is the only setting where quality is reasonably assured. 3, demand the full 6-panel certificate of analysis, not just HPLC alone. If a vendor can't provide all 6, walk away. 4, don't buy oral peptide capsules sold for systemic effects. Your gut destroys them before they reach your circulation. Now, there are some situations where they are pharmaceutically engineered to do that, but they are limited. Talk with your doctor about which ones. 5. If you're using any growth hormone secretagogue, monitor your labs. IGF-1, fasting glucose, HPLC, inflammatory markers. If anything moves in the wrong direction, stop. And underneath all of it, build your foundation. Yeah, zinc, magnesium, electrolytes, vitamin D, quality sleep, real food. These actually drive your hormones and gene expression every single day in a gentle way that your body can regulate. There's decades of human data. In my book, Dirty Genes, I've explained the word health, and I spell health. Health is a 4-letter word. It's spelled W-O-R-K. By injecting a peptide, do not think that you can just not do anything, not sleep, not eat well, not exercise, not make the right decisions, and magically have your pecs huge, your brain functioning, and going through life feeling great and in a good mood all the time. That's not how it works, and it can come back and bite you in the butt. Get off your couch, go exercise, eat well, make the right decisions, and be careful with the peptides. Every recommendation I made, the cancer screening, the lab monitoring, the foundational nutrients, they all point back to one system, your methylation cycle. Methylation is how your body turns genes on and off, how it makes your neurotransmitters, detoxifies what you're exposed to, and regulates your inflammation. It runs roughly 1 billion times a second in every cell you have. And if it's not running well, because of MTHFR variants, depleted B vitamins, low glutathione, or a dozen other things, nothing downstream works very well either. That includes peptides. The compounds we just spent 15 minutes on are epigenetic modulators. I made a video discussing epigenetic modulation and what methylation is, what it does, how to test for it, and what to do if your genetic variants are slowing it down. Watch that next. All right, you folks that are generally healthy, you college students or you gym rats, and you're taking your peptides, you're talking at the water cooler which peptides or which one for which thing, and you're injecting them, you're swallowing them, and you're all comparing all the benefits you're feeling. Well, I hope you're doing the foundation first, because we really don't have long-term human data that is reproducible in a plethora of these peptides. Yes, some, very few, but where are you actually buying these peptides? Gray market, right? Hey man, which website did you go to get these things? Oh man, I got it off of this one. It was like 15 bucks instead of 400. I feel great. Yeah, that's why you're salivating everywhere. No, be careful where you buy these things. Get your peptides from an accredited compound pharmacy. Do not go on the gray market. And if you haven't put in the foundational work first, the sleep, the food, the exercise, the good healthy relationships, kicked out the toxic relationships, kicked out the crap food, then you should not be reaching for peptides. Reach for peptides if you've exhausted all other avenues. They could be absolutely phenomenal for certain situations when used properly. I don't discount that, but they're used way too much because, let's face it, we're fucking lazy. We want fast. We want easy. We want the Staples easy button, right? I get it. So do I. But you know how health is spelled? W-O-R-K. Put the work in. Save how your genetic expression is supposed to work. Don't bypass it by injecting something in your skin and it goes throughout your entire body, including your brain. You don't know what's going to happen in 5 years, 10 years from now. And I know we want that instant gratification. So do I, man. So do I. But I also don't want cancer in 10 years from something that I injected in my arm that I have no idea what the hell is in it or what it's doing. Be careful.